Happy Monday, everybody. It's time for another edition of Ask Mike. Courtney Mims alongside Mike Irwin here. Mike, it's good to have you back.
Took a week off, missed a few things, but I'm catching up.
You are, and you had a great time with your 99-year-old mother, right?
That's right.
99.
99.
That's crazy. You have great genes in your family. I want Mike Irwin's genes over here. As always, I do want to let you guys know, if you are watching us on YouTube and you could go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button for me, that would be awesome, and it helps us out. If you're watching on our website, you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing, and we thank you for that as well. Our first question is from Mousetown, who asked, and I knew Mousetown was going to ask a basketball question. I'm glad he did. Is it just me, or did our basketball team take a step backwards last week? At A&M, Big Z, Nelly, Thero, and Wagner all underperformed. Not good.
Well, first of all, if you say went backwards, you have to consider the whole week, because they went 1-1.
Right.
And they beat an LSU team that had beaten them earlier. They beat them at Bud Walton. And so it wasn't a whole disaster. And here's the thing I would say right off the bat, because I remember reading some media coverage of that LSU game, right? And that was the day before I left, but they were calling LSU a bad team. Mm-hmm. Here's what I would say. LSU is a bad team in the SEC because they only had one conference win. That doesn't make them bad. South Carolina hasn't won an SEC game yet. They're not bad.
Well, they've gotten close to beating some really good SEC
well,
teams.
and LSU ended up beating Oklahoma after they lost to Arkansas, and they had Ole Miss beat before they played Arkansas. I think they were up by double digits and blew it right there at the end. So here's what I would say. South Carolina is 0-12 in the SEC, but they were 10-3 outside the SEC. LSU was 11-2 before SEC play started. So you got to be careful when you start calling somebody bad. This is a weird year in the SEC in which it is so good, the league and the competition, a team can look like a bad team when really they're just bad compared to other SEC teams, which are better. So they won that game. So let's talk about going to A&M. Here's the thing about A&M. Everybody will tell you other teams this year have hated to play them because they play this weird game of basketball. They don't do that much offensively. It's all based around their defense. And it's pretty clear to me that what they do is when you're getting ready to play them, they look at your scores, who scores. And then their whole goal is to shut them down. So Nelly Davis had averaged 17 points a game over the last 5 before that game. A&M held him to 7. Thero was averaging 15-8. They held him to 10. Wagner was averaging 10. He got held to 4. Z's average was just 9 going into that game, but he'd averaged 16 the previous 4 games, and he scored 13. So they targeted those players and did a good job on them. However, they didn't take Carter Knox into consideration because he was only scoring 7 a game, and he scored 17. So that kind of shows you what A&M does. Arkansas lost that game on turnovers. They got careless.
17.
Yeah.
Oh.
We saw Cal get mad, kind of for the first time, really mad, because I think they were a little too casual at times. I don't think it's an indication that they're going backwards. You need more information to say that. I don't know what will happen going to Auburn, and that's tough. Yeah. But we'll see what they do when they come back home. They're certainly still in a position to make the tournament. It's in their hands. They've got to win some games. But again, I just think saying they're going backwards because of what happened to A&M I think that's an exaggeration.
Well, it was a sloppy game. I mean, everyone can say that. There was some really sloppy play at times. And for me, I look at that game, the turnovers is just ugly. But if you look at some of the other games, turnovers hasn't been an area that this team has particularly struggled in. That game was an outlier there.
They got careless, but they were playing a team that's really good defensively.
I understand that. Where I kind of saw a baby little pattern, right? And for me, this is one of the, and I know Coach Cal is seeing this too, is the missed layups. The easy shots that you're missing, the missed dunks, you're going, what is happening? Why is this? You have a NOAA basketball system. You're supposed to be tracking your shots. So are you only tracking your jumpers and your threes? You can't make the easy ones. You can't make the bunnies, as I was saying on social media. That's where I've seen a slight baby pattern, and we'll see if that continues moving forward, because that's an issue. That is an issue.
You know who doesn't miss layups or dunks?
Who?
Jonas Ado. He doesn't. But he doesn't get many opportunities, and that we're going to talk about that in a minute, but that could be changing.
It could be. It could be. And I think you're exactly right. I said to some people, who talked about Jonas Ado after that LSU game, and I said, look, he played excellent defensively. I think where you want to see him improve is offensively. Hog Redneck wants to know, what is your take on Cal after the A&M game? He seemed really mad. I haven't seen that before. What do you think that means? Is he starting to lose it?
It's amazing to me. Do you know how Cal, excuse me, I don't know what's going on with my throat.
I'm the same way, Mike.
Everybody's been sick. He does this to the media in press conference. He will ask a question as if, okay, do you remember what I said about this? And then everyone will sit there going, duh. He likes to do that because I think what he's saying is, I'm consistent in what I say. And you need to understand that. Look, I'm covering him for the first time. At Kentucky, you don't pay that much attention to a guy. The Arkansas plays once a year, maybe twice. But in watching him, everything he has said from the first summer workouts, going into the fall when they started working out full time, and then going into the November, December games, everything he has said has been consistent. He talked about we had all these injuries and we had all these people out, and there were times in which I didn't have enough guys to scrimmage, 5, 6 guys at practice. And he said we had to concentrate first on getting people healthy. And we know the injury with Nellie Davis and how long that took for him to come around. And then Adu's just now apparently starting to recover from the surgery that he had. So he's talked about that. And one of the things that he said pretty consistently is, I got all these young guys. I don't have a lot of senior leadership. They're all playing together for the first time in a new place. I got to be careful with them. I can't just unload on these guys. I don't want to destroy their spirit. So he's been pretty forgiving. He's been pretty uplifting. But I think he's reached a point now, and he said this after the game, now it's different. They've improved. I'm not going to accept some of this stuff anymore. In his press conference, he talked about somebody that came over to the bench and said, hey, that was my fault, I did that. And he said, no kidding, it was your fault. Who else did it? You did it. So yes, it's your fault. None of this, yeah, it's okay, it'll be all right. So I think that's what we're really seeing, is he's entering a new phase now. We're at a point now where we either make the tournament or we don't. You guys have improved. Now there are no more excuses. That's what I read from the press conference. Not that he's freaking out, that he's moving on to the next step in the plan.
But I like him getting mad.
Yeah.
I like that fire, that drive. I like him, banging the table a little bit and getting mad over it.
If you remember, and I don't remember who it was, but he was talking to one of the players while the game was in progress. He's standing over there right next to Cal, and Cal's talking to him. And it might have been Wagner, somebody, no, I think it was Ado.
Oh, yeah? I think it was.
Threw the ball right at him when he wasn't even looking. And you see Cal turn around and start stomping on this table behind him,
He
so
gets
he's getting a little frustrated
He
here.
gets animated during games, and I like to see it in that post-game press conference. And to your point of being consistent about what he says, I will say, he has been consistent about what he says. He said the same thing at Kentucky. They do have a point there. I've gone back and listened to press conferences. I'm like, the man has had a consistent message from every stop he's been at. And so I will say that. He's consistent when it comes to those press conferences and what he says in them, because he said the same things at different places. KY Hogg says, thanks to my wife, who's good with computers, I've been watching these bits from Calipari after the games. Is he benching Ado? He's their leading scorer. I thought he was okay against the Aggies, better than Davis and Wagner.
Thero may have dropped off a little bit lately, but I don't think it's been dramatic. I think maybe there's a little bit of motivation there. If you put him on the bench, maybe he plays better. But if you listen to what he said, that's really not what he was talking about. I said before I left on vacation 2 weeks ago, I may have even made that point the week before that, and we just talked about it. They've got to figure out a way to get Jonas Ado scoring points and get him, and so they've been playing him more and more. Cal said after the A&M game, it looks like now he's healed up, he's full speed, he's moving better and all that stuff, so they're playing him more. But the problem that they've been having is that when he comes in, Z comes out.
Right.
Okay, So when he comes back out, Z comes back in, and what's Z's biggest problem? He's not a good down low defender.
Yeah, defense, yeah.
He's got two issues. He blocks shots, but he doesn't block shots against quick guards that go around him and get the ball up quick. He's late in swiping at the ball.
Do you see that Aggies guy who went down the court and dunked on him? And I was like, you're 7'2", man. Why are we just falling?
He lacks quickness in situations
I
like
agree.
that. And sometimes he's out of position. And then, he can also be back bumped into to where a guy's just right around. All he's got to do is put it up and in. You can't do that to Ado. You can't bump him back, and he's in position where nobody's going to blow by him. Sometimes they do it when he's out front because they've got him out front too much, in my opinion. But when he's down low, he defends it pretty well. So, what if you play them together? Now you've solved your problem. You got defense there, you've got offense there. I think the key to Jonas scoring more points is to have somebody like Z in there when he's got the ball down low. Whoa, there he is. He's open because they're going to try to stop him because he's the point scorer. I mean, he's had games where he scored 25, 26 points.
Yeah, recent games, yes.
They're not going to be looking at Ado to score a lot of points. And you can just dish it over to him and boom. I mean, that guy makes layups. He doesn't miss layups and dunks. If he gets the ball down low, he's going to score unless somebody's all over him. So, to me, that was the most significant thing that was said after that game, that Cal is going to try that and see.
Yeah.
So, but here's the problem. If those guys start together and play together, do they come out of the game together? Because if they do, now what do you do?
Yeah, you don't have, yeah.
You've got to bring Brazil in, obviously, and I think Ado Thero is a guy, he's a forward, he's not huge, but he's a good defender, he's got good jumping ability, and I think you've got those two guys to kind of protect the rim a little bit. Now, it may be that you get some overlap because Z has played a lot more than Thero, so you might start them at the same time. At some point, Jonas comes out, Z stays in.
You're saying Z has played a lot more than Jonas.
Yes, he's more playing time.
Yeah.
So if you start them together, you may see at some point Jonas Ado come out, Z stays out on the floor, then you bring Brazil in, and then at some point you bring Z out and bring Jonas Ado back in with Brazil.
Right.
They don't necessarily have to play together all the time, but I think he's going to start them together at the same time, and I would assume in the second half it would be the same thing. And we'll see how that works out.
Yeah, it's just going to be interesting. I think it's an interesting kind of concept here that we've seen Coach Cal do some of it at Kentucky, right, with different players. I just think that sometimes it hasn't worked out like he's thought. Maybe it will with Jonas Ado and Big Z. I'm hoping it does. It'll just be an interesting thing to see if it works out moving forward.
It's the one missing piece if they can make it work.
It is, if they can make it work. That's
right.
The question, because this isn't the first time that Coach Cal has done something like this. He has played two bigs before at Kentucky, and if you talk to people who are very knowledgeable about Kentucky and Kentucky basketball, they will tell you that it hasn't worked out every single time. It hasn't.
Whatever.
That it worked out with what?
You pay too much attention to these Kentucky.
You say I pay attention. I like to get their opinions on stuff.
Their opinion means zip to me. Kentucky fans, he's living rent-free in their heads. All they want to do is criticize this guy. He's not their coach anymore. Shut up.
But they haven't criticized him on that. They've said, yes, he's done that before in the past. And when it worked, he had Karl Anthony Towns and Willie Cauley-Stein, right? That's when it worked out for him. He doesn't have those players on this team.
Okay.
He doesn't have them.
So you're officially saying this is a bad idea.
Whoa, Mike Irwin, hold on. Whoa, I just said, rewind the tape. I'm interested to see how it works.
Let's put it this way.
That's what I'm on the record saying.
I'm more optimistic about this than you are.
You are more optimistic. A lot of people, I've been on the record not being as optimistic as I should be about this basketball team, okay?
That's all right.
And I will say, you say Thero, it hasn't been so bad. He had 0 points in the first half against LSU. 0 points. That's a problem. That is a problem, right? He cannot have 0 points in the first half of a game. And you say, not a bad LSU team. I get that. But they are bad when you look at it holistically in the SEC. Ado should, or Jonas Ado, or
I'm just saying, I don't think that's the main reason why he's doing this with Thero.
I agree, but maybe, just maybe.
If you listen to what he said, yeah, it could motivate him.
It can motivate him a little bit. That's what I was about to say.
But then he proceeded to talk about this other plan, and I got the impression that was the main reason why this is being done.
And I absolutely agree. I don't hate the plan. Let me be on record saying, before anybody says, Courtney says it's not going to work.
But you've got Kentucky fans saying they tried this before and it didn't work. So maybe, it could be
He's tried it a few times.
It could be dangerous.
I'm just saying, he has tried it a few times. Go back in history. He doesn't have two players like Karl Anthony Towns and Willie Cauley-Stein, right? He doesn't. Could it work? Absolutely. Could it also not work? Yeah, you need to do Thero getting going. I don't like seeing a stat sheet where at the first half against an LSU team that Arkansas is better than, I will be on the record saying that, and you have 0 points against them. That's a problem. That is. Let's just talk. Let's just say that. Okay. I'm going to calm down, Courtney. Breathe a little bit. Whew. Mike, you're getting me angry on a Monday here. Marty Burns Proxy asks, after next year's Hunter Shuffle and BWA, will there be updates to the arena itself? There has been a plan discussed to add more boxes, etc. Has that been dropped? The building is coming up on 32 years old, so some renovations may be due.
Okay. As far as big renovations, extra, whatever they call that, a new thing below the skyboxes, it was a fan, it was a, what would you call that area in the plans we saw?
Yeah, it's like a box area. Like
you could go back and get your drinks and stuff, but then
like a club.
Like a club seating, and you had loge seats below, wider, and all that, and then you had an area to mess around in with food and stuff. That's on hold right now. They don't have the money to do that right now. We're going to talk a lot about revenue sharing again later on, and that's the focus. You've got to have this. It now looks like that may start in July. And you've got to have the money to put that into your budget for the next academic year. And they have to have that money first. So they're putting that off. And I was told that even these infrastructure issues, which apparently electrical, plumbing, and some other things like that, maybe heating and air conditioning, that was approved too in 2023. Although I was told by somebody in the athletic department, we can make those changes anytime we want to. They don't have to approve that.
Okay.
Because it's not renovation, you're just
you're just maintenance. It's maintenance.
Yeah, you're doing maintenance. Yeah. But apparently none of that's been done either, because again, they're not spending a lot of money on stuff.
They aren't.
What were we talking about at baseball, where the free little coupon that you get if you're media?
If you're media, you get a coupon
and it was,
for food.
You could get a pretty nice meal there with fries.
It was $12, which will get you, if you go around the baseball stadium, you'll know that will get you, like at the taco truck, it'll get you some chili cheese fries, it'll get you a nice little meal.
A burger and fries.
But now
it's $10.
It's $10, which getting a burger and fries is $10.75.
Yeah, so you have to pull 75 cents out of your pocket. Now, look, I'm not complaining about that, but what that tells me is the athletic department is saving money any way they can right now.
Yep.
Because they're asking for money, and I've defended Hunter Yurachek because he needs it. And if you want Arkansas to win, you better understand they got to have money.
They do.
And the whole solution to what you've been complaining about, most of the fan base have been complaining about NIL money and all this, and you're buying players these days, and we don't like it. Well, there's a plan in place. We're going to talk, there's a new development on it, and we're going to talk about it at the end of this segment. But the solution is going to cost some money from the athletic department.
Yes.
You're finally going to be paying the players to play. It's right out there in the open.
Directly.
It's not through some phony NIL nonsense. It's right there for everybody to see, and everybody has the same amount.
Correct.
So in order to do that,
you got to get to that amount. You've got to get to that amount. If you don't get to
that point, you're still in trouble.
You're behind everybody else who has that amount, that max amount. I mean, they have talked about doing renovations to Bogle Park. Bogle Park needs renovations. They've talked about doing renovations to the soccer stadium as well.
Those
have all been put on the back burner.
Dave Van Horn wants some more stuff at Baum Walker.
I know.
Knowing Van Horn, he may go out and get it on his own because he has his own way.
He might raise the money himself.
He has his own way of getting money.
He does. Hog Bowski asks, would giving tickets to every high school team in the state willing to attend be considered a recruiting violation? Filling the house with teenagers for the Christmas break game would make up for the lack of current students.
Yeah, as we understand it, that if you're talking about high school age people, it would be a violation. Now, the women's program does an elementary school day or whatever, and apparently the age is a consideration. If they feel like, okay, some elementary school, you're not going to be doing that to recruit.
Right. You're not going to be recruiting 6 and 7-year-olds, right? That's what they kind of say.
No, this is not going to happen. I can't see this ever happening. The other issue is with the women, there's so many empty seats. They can allow a bunch of these kids in, and they're not going to fill the place up.
And they can give it to they don't discriminate on any school. They give them out to so many schools in the area.
You're never going to fill that up. If you tried to do this during Christmas break and tried to figure out, okay, how many students may not be here, and then you guessed wrong, all of a sudden you'd have a bunch of people sitting there where the students were. But I don't like the idea of having high school guys sitting there with college students it just seems an odd mix,
Yeah, and
you got to wait to get to college before you're part of the student.
Absolutely. And then there's also the fact of, okay, well, if we don't give them, you're talking about giving them to basketball teams, right, to high school teams. Okay, but then what about the rest of the student population of that high school? They might turn around and say, well, you're giving favoritism to that high school or this high school.
It's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's just not going to happen. It's probably a huge headache. And, even if the Arkansas wanted to go the NCAA and say, how would we get around this? There's probably way too many hoops to jump through and to make it fair on everything. It would just be a violation. So anyways, not going to happen. But we are going to talk about game day atmosphere, maybe some things that could happen. Parallax Pig wants to know what happened to media interest in coming to basketball games. Alabama game, the section was about 75% full. Usually it's about 50%
Now this is weird. This is a guy
that
looks over to see how many people in the media are there.
Wow.
I've never had anybody ask me about that before. They don't even pay any attention. There's this section, and I think it's about 4 tables.
It is 4 tables.
Up near the top on the southeast side of the arena. We used to all be along Press Row where all the rich people sit now. We used to be right there.
Yeah, I know.
But now we're up, and there's about 4 rows and there's a lot of empty seats there. I'm going to explain to you why there usually are a lot of empty seats. If you're the sports information office, you have to allow for the largest, you have to have seating for the maximum amount of media coverage you're going to get. So what if you had Arkansas's number 2, they're playing Kentucky, they're number 1. You're going to have national media come into that game. You're going to have all kinds of Kentucky media come in. That's in addition to the Arkansas media. So you've got to have enough to accommodate those rare games in which you've got a lot of outside people coming in. That's why there are more seats. That's why you can look over there at any given time and see empty seats.
Yeah.
Because those people aren't there for every game. So it's not surprising to me that there were more people there for the Alabama game because Alabama's good and their media travels. So the excess amount that you saw there was not from Arkansas media people.
Right,
it was from more people coming in. Now, I'm not going to say that the number of Arkansas media people who are actually there doesn't change from time to time, and there are all kinds of reasons why that could happen. For instance, if you're here working and you've got one other person with you and you need that person to help you do something else, you can sit here in our studio, watch the game, know exactly what happened, and then you can watch the press conference on Zoom afterward. So you don't technically have to go to that if you've got other stuff you have to cover. So that's true of all media. It's not media going, this game's not important enough, I'm not going to go. There are just other issues that can cause that to happen.
Yeah.
And I sense what he's saying is we've talked a lot about fans not showing up for games. He said, well, media's not showing up either. I don't think that's what's going on there. Again, I think sometimes you get more media because outside media is coming in, and I think you have reasons why local media sometimes don't use their full amount of
I don't think
spots.
people really understand, and I'm going to say something that might be shocking to many of our viewers. But I don't know if anybody knows this, but they're cutting back on local sports coverage and local media coverage everywhere across the United States. They do budget cuts. They're also, a lot of local papers and local media companies are hurting right now. And so they're doing cuts to their staffs and things like that. There is sometimes only one person doing it all, doing everything. They've also got to have time off. They can't have overtime, and the company can't pay them overtime. So it's like stuff like that that I really don't think the average person who watches our show understands, that it's not a perfect world where you have a 10-person sports team. You don't. We're very lucky here at the Pig Trail Nation that we have a very large sports team.
We have 5, but we don't always have 5 at work.
Oh, we don't. Exactly.
I was off last week. Alyssa was off doing some promotional stuff in Europe.
Yeah.
So that's 2 people missing.
Gone. Yeah.
And then you got sick.
And I had the flu.
You got the flu. So all of a sudden you don't have anybody at that LSU game.
Exactly. And so everybody always asks me, they go, wait, Courtney, you don't go to every game? And I go, no, I physically can't. I physically am one person. And if my job was just covering Arkansas basketball, I could go to every game. Yeah. My job is not just covering Arkansas basketball.
But again, what's interesting is the first time in all these years I've done this show that anybody's ever asked a question about the number of people in the media that are at a game.
I mean, Parallax Pig, good on you for noticing that. And being very attuned to that. To baseball now. I'm glad we have some baseball questions because we got to talk about this Diamond Hogs team. The Hog Hawkins wants to know, where is the change in batting philosophy we're supposed to be seeing? So far, the Diamond Hogs look a lot like last year's team, hitting gaps in the lineup, not much base running, still swinging for the fences, struggling against a team that went 9-21 in conference play last season.
Okay, I can see where somebody might ask that question because it was in the off season. That's what Van Horn said. We're going to do this, 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 and this. And certainly in the first game on Friday, there was no evidence of that. In fact, it was the opposite. It looked a lot like last year. We had these holes in the lineup. We had guys not being left on base and all that stuff. I think what you have to look at, and this, when you're early in the year, you don't know how good the team is you are playing.
Correct. Van Horn talked about that. He said we don't have much scouting on this team.
And what you know right now is that this Washington State team under their head coach was his first year last year. They weren't good.
No.
They had a horrible conference record.
Awful.
Losing season overall. But he went out and completely transformed this team.
Well, they lost a lot of that team.
They lost a
lot of that team.
He brought in a lot of guys.
Correct.
Now, we don't know how good they are, but I know good pitching when I see it.
Yeah.
Game 1, that starter, what was he doing? He was putting the ball, if you're a right-handed batter, it was on the outside part of the plate, and it was dropping every time. If you're a left-handed batter in particular, it's coming in at you. You got to swing at it because they were calling the strikes. When you didn't swing at it, it was right on the edge of the plate, and then you're swinging above it because it comes down and drops. That guy was a good pitcher.
Yeah.
So he's holding them down.
Well, they threw their best on the, they were like, we got to put our best out there.
And then the reliever they brought in was good.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Arkansas got lucky in that game. In the end, they kind of gave it away with some mistakes. I'm talking about Washington State. So, yeah, I could see where you look at that game, what's going on here. But that was a really good pitcher. Game 2, the pitching dropped off and Arkansas killed him. But how many times have we seen over the last few years, Arkansas scores in double digits, like 14 runs, and then what happens the next game? Yeah, it's back down to 2 or 3. And so they came back in game 3, and for the longest time, that was a 2-run game. And you're going, okay, we're back to this.
Back again.
We're back to this nonsense again. And then they won that game 5-3, but why did they win it? Home runs. This wasn't supposed to be how you win. You were supposed to string hits together. And
exactly. It's a little small ball.
I think at one point after I looked up game 3, I think they had 4 stolen bases and 3 guys thrown out.
Okay.
So they're doing some base running. Maybe it's not as much as you thought. I started questioning the defense a little bit too, but when you look at the overall numbers, Arkansas's numbers are pretty good right now. Now, they did play game 4 on Monday when we do this show. It was just over.
But they won all 4.
Won all 4.
They swept Washington State. So.
And this was this game 4 starter I think they started her out almost immediately.
They did. Didn't he only get like 11 pitches or something?
Yeah, and then they brought in a guy who shut them out for the first 3 innings. Yeah. But then after that, he started missing pitches, started walking guys, and the next thing you know, Arkansas scored like 6 runs in an inning or whatever. They run rule these guys 12-2. So you got 2 run rule games and 2 fairly close games. And what does that all mean? Is it last year?
What does that all mean? What does it mean?
Here's what I would say. He's got more options at the plate, because if you looked at what happened after game 1 and 2, or after game 1, and then game 2 was a blowout, he came back in and he clearly looked at the fact that there were 3 guys at the bottom of that lineup that all batted under 140. They were gone in that game 3. And he brought in 3 guys that ended up hitting all like 300, 400, 500 right there. So he's got options. That's the whole point. He doesn't have to just stick with these guys.
And also, Mike, let's be honest. Again, you couple with what Dave himself said in that pre-series press conference, right? Where he said, we don't have a lot of scouting on these guys. He was upfront about that. He said, we do not have a lot of scouting on these guys. This is going to tell me a lot about our team. It's why we scheduled it. It's why we wanted to do this series. It's why we wanted 4 games, because it's going to tell us a lot. He's still working on that lineup. We had questions. It can change. We had questions about who was going to play first base, the week before the game. And he was, still talking about, well, we have a lot of options there, right? We have a lot of options. They are still figuring it out as well. It's the first series. Right. If this is something that continues and we're, talking about this before SEC play, I can understand how you might be concerned. It's the first series. They're still figuring things out, and they didn't drop a game. They were 4-0, guys. Calm down.
But I will say I think the pitching is better overall.
Yeah.
I mean, their starting pitching was outstanding.
Oh, yeah.
I think their team ERA is still under 2 after 4 games. And they've got bullpen guys, they've got closers, they've got middle relief guys. I didn't see anything from the pitching where maybe McIntyre when he came in and gave up the home run, because he gave up a lot of home runs last year, but then that was the only run he gave up. So I just don't see anything where you can look at the pitching and go that it's not better. And he said it's better overall.
Oh, well, everyone said it's better overall. I mean, talk about the players. Kendall Diggs turned around and said, I don't think you guys understand that some of the starters that we have, right? Some of those starters, like Zach Root, is a guy that could go to another SEC school and probably be their ace.
Yeah.
And be their ace. And he's, we have Gabe Gackle. I mean, it's just, that's crazy to think about to me. But, we have some more, I think, baseball questions. H.L. McCamish asked, what did you think about freshman pitcher Carson Wiggins? Can he be a starter this season? He pitched just 1 inning of relief, but finished off game 3 with a strikeout in spite of getting some bad calls from an ump with vision issues.
I did notice that. I think he had 2 guys struck out and it didn't get the call. And he looked perturbed, but it never really did bother him much. I think he gave up maybe 1 hit. And so this was a 5-3 game that he inherited, so he's got a runner on second, and he's new. This is his first time to pitch. He could have, oh, wow, a guy got a hit. Because look, here's my take on guys that throw 100 miles an hour.
I mean, he was throwing heat, Mike.
A lot of schools, I've been reading it, a lot of schools have guys that can throw 100. I'm telling you, if all you do is throw a 100-mile-an-hour fastball, somebody's going to hit it. They just can't. What impressed me about Wiggins, and this is the difference between he and his brother when his brother was here, he's got movement on his fastball. It's not just 100 miles an hour, it moves. Yeah. He's locating better. He's got 3 pitches, not 1. And I think it was Gage Wood that came on after that game and talked about what he's seeing with him, and he said, man, this guy is like, he shouldn't even be here. He should probably already be in minor league baseball.
Well, that was a lot of people thought he was going to be.
So they're lucky to have him. They're going to have him for 2 years. And will he be a starter? He could be, but right now I think they're going to leave him as a game 3 closer, and then they'll move from that. You might see him jump to a longer middle inning relief if they think he can go multiple innings. And then from that, you might see him be a starter if another starter has an issue. But they've got 4 guys, honestly. I think they proved it this weekend. They've got 4 guys that can fill those 3 weekend issues. So if somebody's hurt or somebody just is sick or whatever.
Yeah.
They can just plug another.
Yeah,
I
another
can't
guy.
pronounce this guy's name.
Betelgeuse?
Betelgeuse.
Betelgeuse, yeah. Betelgeuse.
I want to say Beetlejuice, but whatever.
A lot of people do, Mike. You're not the only one. I've heard it pronounced like that.
But he pitched game 4. He could go in and pitch 2 or 3. And he's that good.
I'm telling you, I think Zach Root's a guy that if Gabe Gackle is sick or anything, he can fill that role.
You know, you might see Carson Wiggins in a role like that, but I doubt it. I think what they want to do is use him as a reliever this year and then make him a starter next year.
Yeah, absolutely. Eddie Lynn says Arkansas hit the jackpot with the Hogs' third baseman. He's talking about Brent Iredale right there. He said he hates the cold weather in Arkansas, but you never know it. This Aussie hits for average, hits for power, and he is a solid defender.
Yeah, he's a transfer from New Mexico Junior College by way of New South Wales, Australia.
I love it. His accent is great.
And he did this interview where he just came right out and said, I hate the weather around here. It stinks. I agree, 100%. I hate the weather in January and February. It stinks.
Yeah.
I want to go south for the winter. I need a condo. You guys need to let me do this remotely from Florida for 2 months.
Okay, we can maybe do that in the budget.
I hate the weather right now, but it will get better. And the main thing is he may not like the weather, but he's hitting pretty well in the weather. Thing is, he brought his parents. These parents came with him.
He did, yeah.
So they were here for these 4 games, and then they're going on to Arlington next week, and then they're going to go back home. So they got to see him really get off to a good start.
Yeah.
I think he was batting just under 600 before the – I haven't –
Before Game 4.
Yeah, I haven't looked at the numbers after Game 4. But he's hit 2 home runs. He got 4 runs scored, 7 RBI. That was after 3 games. And his fielding percentage is 1,000%. Yeah. He's perfect.
Yeah. No errors, yeah.
So what's there to complain about?
Nothing right now. He was a huge pickup for them, and he's just, I can't wait to hear him talk a little bit more in the press conferences because, man, he is great.
He says that his parents say he's losing his accent.
No, I don't think he is. I can hear it quite well.
They're his parents. They've been around him his whole life.
Okay. I mean, maybe. I mean, I lost my British accent, so you wouldn't. Yeah, I mean, I did too.
If you had that British accent, I wouldn't like you at all because I don't like the Brits. You know that.
I know
I'm
you
Scottish.
don't like the Brits.
We don't like the Brits.
I know you're Scottish. I know you don't like the Brits.
They stole our land.
I know. We could talk about that for hours, but I love Brent Iredale. He is awesome. S. Giles says Arkansas softball team is tearing it up right now. He's not wrong. They are undefeated. They're 10-0 with the Division I home run leader and no-hit pitching. I'm getting excited with SEC play starting early next month. And I don't know if S. Giles knows this, but this is the best start. They are off to the best start. This 10-0 start, best start in program history.
And I don't think they have the home run leader for this year. It's the career home run leader.
Yes, I think you're right on that with Bree Ellis, right?
Right.
And
they did have a no-hitter last week. So
yeah, Robin Harry. Yeah.
They've gone 5-0 in 2 tournaments. Now they got 1 more left. It starts this week. So if they go 15-0, they can start SEC play, but they got to go on the road to Ole Miss with the start SEC. I
mean, the SEC is going to be tough this year, right? I mean, that's what everyone's preparing for.
I've looked at some of these numbers. I went and looked up Division I softball stats.
Yeah.
Whew.
Oh, I know. And look at the SEC just in general because now you have Oklahoma and Texas. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, it's great they're off to this start.
Did you see how Texas won that game the other day? It might have been their first one where the player got hit in the head.
Yes.
She hits the ball. I guess the runner on third, all you got to do is just throw home and she's out or just go to first.
Go to first, yeah.
What she did was throw home and she hits this Texas base runner right square in the head.
Yep.
And she kind of stumbles and then goes on to first and they win the game.
I mean, they've got some girls who can play. I mean, seriously, it's insane just the talent that is in the SEC. I like this softball team, though. I mean, you have to say you like what you see from them early on and what they've been able to do. And Robin Harrer with that no-hitter, I think that was like the 11th or 12th they've had in program history.
Right.
I mean, she's incredible. She's so good. So Bree Ellis, we could talk about them for days, just how good that Arkansas softball team is. Razor Alex 88 wants to know, how would you evaluate how our current fan engagement effort is doing? I wish there was a way for fans to consistently raise heck from pregame all the way to the final second. Sometimes we just have to make rowdiness and rambunctiousness a habit each and every game. Anybody, anywhere, anytime mentality.
This is tricky because you're talking about ways to get the crowd pumped up maybe when the game itself is not pumping you up. Aggies do that all the time. We've made fun of them.
Kentucky fans do that. When I was at
Kentucky
Rupp Arena,
fans
that was
do that
insane.
at Rupp. Arkansas fans used to kind of do that, especially if you go back to Barnhill. You haven't seen it so much lately. In fact, I think it's getting worse.
It is.
And your theory, which I think is well-founded, is that you've got a different type of fan in there. Too many cases, you've got people in there on corporate tickets.
Correct.
And they're not typical fans, and they don't get as riled up. They're just there to watch. If it's good, yeah, okay, that was great. But they're not going to jump up and go bananas when you're getting beat. So how do you make that happen? Now, you did say, and I missed this, they did have a, what do you call this? A person.
He was like the hype man. He's called the hype man, and I think his name is Corey, if I'm not incorrect on that. I think. Don't come at me if that's not the correct name, but he is the hype man for Arkansas gymnastics.
Right.
And I'm telling you, this guy might be a robot. He might run on batteries, Mike, because he has so
like
much
Robkin.
energy. Yes, he has so much energy. He's awesome. I mean, he is just running around the building. I just think completely insane. And so he filled in. He's normally at the Arkansas gymnastics meet, so he's not normally there for basketball games, but he filled in for John Williams, who usually is on the microphone hyping the crowd up, because John Williams was filling in for the PA guy. So that's how he got to be there.
That's a one-time thing.
It was a one-time thing, apparently.
I wonder if people will be going, we got to have him back.
I mean, apparently he did really well. I mean, I wasn't there at the game on Saturday, but apparently he did a really good job hyping people
but
up.
for instance, how would you do that in baseball? How do you do it in football? What do you do here? Do you need to come up with new things? I mean, we went through a thing where they were playing, I still remember this, they're playing that song, "Who Let the Dogs Out," and it would just blast your ears out. And I'm going, if that's how you generate energy, I don't want any of that energy. So it's controversial. What some people might think is a good hype, other people go, I don't want that. I'm just going to say the best way to have a great atmosphere, win.
Yeah.
Be winning.
Be good.
Have a good season and be ahead, and even if you're behind.
Be ranked, right?
Yeah, be ranked.
Yeah.
Razorback fans are always more animated when their team is ranked.
Absolutely. I mean, go compare the exhibition game atmosphere when you're taking on #1 Kansas. Compare that to what we have now. And
exactly.
So it's way different, but I think you're exactly right. I think we have to look at the ticketing, because I know they want money. I get it. Hunter Yurchek wants that money, but I think there's a lot of tickets going to people that are fair weather fans.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and you have the Wright's Barbecue. Jordan from Wright's Barbecue made a great point on social media. He goes, I haven't been to Bud Walton, consistently, but man, why are people sitting down when the Hogs are on defense? You got to be standing. You got to be making noise. I don't remember when there were so many people sitting down.
I don't see any solution to this. They've got to have the money. I'm not going to criticize Hunter Yurchek, because he's the guy that got to pay the bills. It's real easy when you don't pay the bills to sit there and tell him what he should do.
Sure.
So if this is what you give up in order to have the money to have players want to come to your school, and again, once we get into revenue sharing, it's not like we're going to offer you more than somebody else is. But if you have less, then you do offer less.
Yeah.
So you've got to be able to meet the cap. And he's got to be able to meet the cap. And I think it's going to start in July, so that's for the next academic year. They've got to come up with $22 million, that's not in the budget this year. So how would you like to be him?
No, I don't. I don't envy him at all. Seriously. T.L. Slayton says, you and Courtney have argued back and forth on whether revenue. Sorry, I can't talk. You and Courtney have argued back and forth on whether revenue sharing will change NIL deals. We really have, Mike. Looks like the whole thing will be taken out of the NCAA's hands. Is that a good thing?
Boy, this is complicated, because
I know.
it's really happened over the last few days. And I'm going to start off by saying that Yahoo Sports, going to give them a lot of credit.
Yep.
They claim that they got an anonymous source from inside the people. I've been talking to people that know what's going on.
Yeah, you have.
But they haven't told me everything. Yeah. And I found out a lot of things that have been going on that I didn't know anything about, and explains a lot of why I've been hearing what I've been hearing. One of the questions that I had when I was hearing all this stuff was, even if they do all this stuff, the NCAA's got to manage it, and they don't have a good track record of managing anything.
Nope.
Well, it came out from Yahoo.
Yeah, so I think you have some graphics here to help people kind of follow along,
let me start
right?
off before we show the graphic by saying, that the real thing that's been going on behind the scenes is the Power Four has taken several athletic directors, and they are the ones that they're taking this away from the NCAA. All of it, all of the revenue sharing, the NIL management, the enforcement of all that. They're taking back over that stuff.
Yeah.
And they're saying, okay, NCAA, here's what you're going to do. You're going to deal with grades, eligibility issues, and things like that. You're good at that.
Yeah. Recruiting violations.
No, this is recruiting violations will go
To them?
to them. So here's what they're doing.
Really?
Yes.
Even recruiting violations, like if you're giving away free tickets, that would still run under the NCAA, would it
I
not?
think the way I understand it, maybe it's just recruiting violations involving
NIL.
involving this revenue sharing and NIL. It's not clear, but here's what they're going to do. And I remember saying 8-9 years ago on the air one time that the NCAA is worthless to college athletics, and here's why. They acted like the member institutions worked for them instead of the other way around. And I remember saying, why don't you just fire them, get rid of them, they're worthless. Start a new organization and get it right. But they never did it. Well, that's what's happening here. They're taking this completely away from them. And here's the weird part. I want you to think about this.
Okay.
They're going to hire a private company to do this.
It's crazy.
And that company, and what's the name of it?
Deloitte, right? Deloitte?
Well, let's go to the first graphic.
Yeah.
Because this is from that Yahoo report.
Yeah.
Okay. Members of the committee, that's the committee of ADs. They've had lawyers from these schools. They have other people involved. Members of the committee, unannounced and kept secret now for months, are from some of college football's biggest brands, including Ohio State's Ross Bjork, Clemson's Graham Neff, and A&M's Trev Alberts. These are some of the people that are involved in that. Now, this is interesting. A&M.
Yeah.
A&M. A&M is one of those schools that's been buying people, trying to buy people forever. Now, we got a guy on our staff, a meteorologist at A&M grad. He's been telling me for a long time A&M is changing.
Yeah.
They're becoming less that and other things. And it may be with this guy on this committee, he's saying, we don't want this anymore. You think about what A&M just went through when they had to buy off Jimbo Fisher.
My gosh.
They had to come up with all this money. And then, they're having to come up with these NIL deals and everything. I think A&M is basically ready to say, okay, let's all do this equally. Let's have a revenue sharing program with a cap on it. Everybody recruits from the same budget, and we'll just get better coaches and have a better atmosphere and recruit guys because we want them to come here and they want to come there.
Sure.
And if they are, I applaud them if that's the new change. Now, the rest of this goes. Others represented included Arizona, Cincinnati, Washington, Georgia Tech, and Kentucky. Commissioners, compliance officers, and general counsels of the 4 power conferences are leading the group. So that's who's doing all of this. And again, the idea is, now let's talk about NIL, because the one thing that surprised me was that this company that they're hiring, they're not just going to do NIL. They're not going to just go check the NILs. They're going in there and checking your revenue sharing program.
Yeah, even
and
your
making sure that you don't cheat with that. You got a budget, $22 million. What if you just say, we'll throw in $3 or $4 million for this guy?
We'll go over the budget.
Who's going to know? Well, they're going to know because they're going to come in and deal with it. Now, here's the good part. If they make this work, this hasn't been approved yet, but if it works, here's what happens. If this company does not do a good job, does not do the job it's supposed to do,
you fire them.
You fire them and hire another company.
Exactly.
Until you get the one, you get it right. Hey, we want you to get these people, and we want to nail them. We want to nail cheaters. The big mistake that the NCAA made back when they were cheating like crazy in the Southwest Conference, they went after SMU, and yes, they were cheating like Nutsoville, but so were a bunch of other schools. They gave SMU the death penalty, and those people stopped cheating. They stopped. But they didn't do the same thing to a bunch of these other cheaters.
Yeah, they needed to do it across the board.
Exactly.
Really.
When you start nailing LSU or Alabama or Tennessee, some of these schools, Phil Fulmer with his little safe in the back of his house.
Tennessee with the McDonald's bags,
go nail these people and knock them out for a year. Say you can't compete. Your whole team will leave if that happens. You will lose your whole team. They won't stick around and do nothing for a year. So the threat of that, if it's enforced, will make this work. And out of what's been a terrible 3 or 4 year chaotic period to college athletics that's frustrated so many fans, might just possibly bring us way back to where we were, and then even better. Because if you get better enforcement, that's the big complaint about the old way things were done.
Yeah, it wasn't
certain
enforced
schools
well.
just cheated.
Yeah, exactly. And
Okay,
it wasn't
if you
enforced
can
well.
stop the cheaters, I promise you. Remember when we talked about the fake injury thing and the,
Oh,
and the
yeah,
proposal now
yeah.
is you're screwed if you do that?
Yeah.
If you punish people badly enough, this whole thing about crowd control where they're running out onto the field, there's a new proposal that says, hey, if you rush the field, you lose the game. That's going to stop that in its tracks.
Oh, absolutely. You're not going to risk doing that.
So if you really make the death penalty a reality, then you're going to stop the cheating, and everybody's going to be forced to do it the right way.
Correct, yeah.
So I'm pretty encouraged by all this.
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, it's crazy. Again, there have been a lot of people that have asked Courtney, what do you think will happen? And we truly, I mean, we talk about all these things being proposed until it's actually put into place, Mike, and it's actually put in there. We won't know what exactly is going to happen. But I do want you put these graphics together.
Yeah, this is for the NIL enforcement.
Right. Okay.
Okay. What's the name? I don't know.
Deloitte.
Never
yeah.
heard of them. What do they do?
They're like a professional, like they do a bunch of different things. They work with a bunch of different sporting entities as well. So they do work in the sports world
Deloitte,
too.
the world's largest professional services network, will operate a new NIL clearinghouse, which is charged with determining fair market value of income earned by athletes outside of the school. That is name, image, and likeness. Deals affiliated with a booster group, or any entity. That's what will be scrutinized.
Yeah.
Now, if you have an NIL deal, if your agent gets you a deal with a company with some entity that's not in any way supports your school,
right?
Then it's considered a legitimate.
Like Dr. Pepper and whoever, Arch Manning, if you want to give that, right, an example of that.
If you can prove that him getting that deal had no ties to the people at Texas, the school, they didn't do it. His agent just went in, and then it's okay. You can get that money. But that's a rare thing. It's not going to happen to more than a handful of athletes.
It isn't. And then to counterpoint this, which is something I've talked about, they know, and you've said this a few times, that even people at Arkansas know that they know that they're probably going to get sued, right? They know that there's going to be NIL agents that go, whoa. I told you that my athlete was worth this much, and you're offering this much, and you're saying it's the fair market value of my athlete? Please, let me take you to court, right? That's going to happen. This is where I think it's going to take a step further once the courts get involved. I think it's going to be that what everyone is trying to avoid, right, Mike? What these schools are trying to avoid, that these athletes are going to be actually employees of the university.
And a players union, which gives them the right to go on strike, which could create a whole other set of problems.
Which is why they're trying to avoid it. But it's honestly, if you want to avoid lawsuits and you want to avoid all the headaches and all the pain of determining a fair market value, well, guess what? Just do what the NFL does, right? Give them a CBA and say, hey, you signed that collective bargaining agreement that was determined by the players union. So you do have a cap, you do have a fair market value.
Yeah.
You give away your rights a
little
bit.
It may come to that, but again, I think there are going to be a few select athletes that could get a big NIL deal, maybe a multi-million, but it has to be a true NIL, not the fake, phony NILs that we see everywhere.
And I think this plan is actually going to help with that very early on. Hopefully it's going to stop some of those things. Hopefully lawsuits don't get out of hand, which...
When you start talking about this, you know what you get? I don't care where you're at. I don't care if it's me, somebody else talking about it. I was looking at Hogville a while ago, and some guy was just mad, and he goes, I don't want to hear that stuff. They're not going to do anything. So you've got real anger on the part of some people who hate what's going on right now, but they refuse to believe the problems are going to be solved. They've just thrown up their towel, and they just accept the fact in their mind that it's all going to be screwed up the way it is now, and so it doesn't do you and I any good to talk about this, because we should just come on the air and go, yep, everything's screwed, nothing's going to change.
No, because I think there are people out there, and we've talked about this, there are people out there that know that the no rules thing and all of that is not good. They've got to bring some order back. And there's more people out there that want to side with that.
More of us
There's
than there are you.
legislators. There are people in Congress right now that love college athletics.
There are
college
judges
sports.
that are coming on board with this. I'm telling you this. I still think if it goes to the Supreme Court, they're going to win.
And Trump turned around and said what Biden's administration put into place about Title IX and how that was affected through NIL. That's not a thing anymore.
Not a thing.
So
he also basically stepped in and said no males playing in women's athletics.
Right. Yeah.
Just made a presidential order or
yep,
whatever.
that it's going to be girls in girls sports and men in men's sports. Yeah.
I think that if some of this gets sued, I think it may go to the Supreme Court and you may see it being upheld.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I should say girls in girls sports, but girls can play in men's sports. I still think that's...
No, they don't want to.
Right, but I think that they still allow that, I think, if I'm correct on that.
They're not allowing women to go in, or men to go into women's sports because it's an unfair advantage.
Exactly. So, sorry, my brain just had to go through that. I was like, wait, I still think women can play men's sports. But anyways, okay. That was a lot of information right there. We appreciate you guys for sticking around for this whole episode. We will see you next Monday to answer more of your questions. And Mike, before we let everybody go, I do want to point out that you can ask questions on hogville.net. A lot of people ask me specifically, how do I ask Mike a question? The best way of doing that is signing up for an account on hogville.net, clicking the forums button across the top.
Once you get a username, it may take a little while for them to send you a username.
Correct.
But once you get your username, then you can go in and click on the Ask Mike forum, and there's a thread there every week where you ask your questions. That's the easiest way to do that.
That is the easiest way to do it. Some of you have already signed up for accounts. That's awesome, but that is the easiest way to get your question answered. If you email me or Mike, sometimes we miss it. So please go on the forum.
Put in a plug for Hogville, because I'm going to tell you something. They have fan forums for all of these sports, football, basketball, baseball. And why it's better than X or Facebook is because it's moderated.
Yes.
You can't go on there and just be a complete idiot and start calling people names and saying stupid things. They will ban you if you do that.
Yeah, we have moderators.
You've got to make rational arguments for what you're saying. And because of that, what's discussed on these various in these various topics, these threads that you'll find in each of these forums, football, basketball, baseball, or whatever, it's a better, you learn stuff in there. I found this stuff that we just discussed about Yahoo. I found it in Hogville. I was looking at it because somebody had noticed it when I didn't. And I went and checked it out, and sure enough, Yahoo had popped up and said this.
There you go.
So you can inform yourself much better there than you can just going on Wacko X and everything in the world is thrown out there. Half the stuff that's on there is not even, it's ridiculous. It's not even really happening.
Yeah, exactly. So again, that's a plug for Hogville. Go over there. You can ask your questions over there. But we'll see you next Monday to answer more of those. We'll see you then.